There are certain people who move through the world carrying an elevated frequency, and they show three very real, unmistakable signs of it. These signs have nothing to do with repeating pretty affirmations or dabbling in surface-level spiritual routines. You can't fake them by forcing yourself into positive thinking, and you can't collect them from a weekend retreat. These signs are energetic realities, actual physical, observable effects that spread through your body and into the way life unfolds around you. When the architecture of your inner world finally settles into deep coherence, it's like tuning your inner instrument to the exact pitch it was always meant to play. And once that pitch is stable, the symphony of reality begins shifting to match it. What we're exploring here is the practical, observable proof behind the principles I've spent years studying. The visible changes that appear when someone reaches true psychic integration. These three signs aren't poetic metaphors or mystical riddles. They're almost scientific in how clearly they show up once your inner world aligns, and you're going to learn how to see them, understand where they come from, and recognize what they reveal about the structure of your soul. Because operating from a high vibration isn't a performance, it isn't an aesthetic. It's the natural consequence of radical inner honesty. You may have already felt pieces of these signs. Maybe you brushed them off as weird luck, or you wondered if something was wrong with you. Maybe you sensed something shifting inside you, something you couldn't quite name. Think of this as the vocabulary you didn't know you needed. This is the psychological breakdown of what an authentic vibrational signature really looks like, and why these three signs can never be reduced to a list of feel-good slogans. They're too potent, too obvious, and too challenging to the spiritual ego to be packaged as simple inspiration. The first sign, physiological rejection. The first sign is physical, and it announces itself without hesitation. Your body becomes a polygraph for your soul, an unwavering, non-negotiable defense system for your truth. It starts rejecting anything misaligned with your core. Not symbolically. Literally. This isn't just feeling off. This is your body issuing a swift, unmistakable somatic protest the moment you agree to something that betrays your inner honesty. It might hit as a migraine the second you commit to something your deeper self refuses. It might show up as sudden nausea right as you're about to say yes when every cell in your body is screaming no. It might be a heavy, inexplicable exhaustion that only appears when you're around people who require you to mask, shrink, or pretend. These aren't ordinary psychosomatic symptoms, the kind that signal buried trauma. This is something far more advanced, your fully awakened somatic intelligence. With deep integration, the core self recruits the body as the final guardian of your authenticity. Your physical form becomes a resonant chamber for your frequency, and anything out of tune gets expelled. For a highly integrated person, forcing yourself to stay in a job that demands conformity or a relationship that requires self-abandonment doesn't just feel stressful, it becomes physically intolerable. Your body isn't reacting to pressure, it's reacting to frequency betrayal. Have you ever tried to push through a situation because you felt guilty or obligated and your body just shut down? As if your biology revolted before your mind could rationalize the compromise. That's physiological rejection in action. Your energetic signature becomes so finely tuned that it can't metabolize inauthenticity anymore. This is an important distinction. Neurosis shows up because the inner world is fragmented and conflicted, but vibrational somatic intelligence rises from integration. It comes from a connection between mind and body so aligned that your biology actively protects your truth. Your body becomes the enforcer of your coherence. People who embody this level of integration discover they can't lie, not even a little, without feeling a tightening in their throat. They can't linger in conversations soaked in deception without feeling physically sick. Their body pushes them toward truth, not as a moral duty, but as a biological requirement. Betraying their frequency introduces static into the entire system, and the body reacts instantly to stop the damage. If you've ever had to quit a job because your health collapsed, or end a relationship because being near someone made you feel sick, understand this. That wasn't weakness, that was power. Your frequency was defending itself. The second sign, synchronicity, becoming dense and precise. The second sign is even more destabilizing because it dissolves the supposed barrier between your mind and the physical world. Synchronicities don't just increase, they become dense, layered, precise. They stop being coincidences and start forming a continuous dialogue between your inner world and external reality. You'll think of a strangely specific question, and someone behind you will casually speak the exact phrase you were focused on. You'll suddenly remember a childhood friend, and the next day you'll run into their sibling in a different country. You'll struggle with a choice, and a passing vehicle will have a message on its side that answers your question so directly it feels like a cosmic joke. And this doesn't happen once in a while. It becomes daily. It becomes your environment. For the psychically integrated individual, the acausal connecting principle, the thread linking psyche and matter, magnifies dramatically. This isn't superstition. It's what happens when consciousness becomes so coherent that the illusion separating inner and outer reality begins to fall apart. The universe stops acting like a neutral stage. Instead, it becomes a real-time feedback loop for your inner state. You're no longer just observing events. You're interacting with them. Your awareness, the collective unconscious, and physical reality merge into a single woven field. Synchronicity stops being a phenomenon and becomes your native language. And once that happens, you can't pretend it's random. You can't dismiss it with logic. You're forced to accept that you are participating actively in the shaping of your reality, and that's not comfortable. Living in constant synchronicity is intense. It means you can't drift through life unconsciously anymore. Every thought, every emotional ripple seems to be mirrored immediately. You feel the universe listening, responding, echoing your intentions, your fears, your unspoken questions. You didn't ask for the responsibility, but you're handed it anyway. This is the second sign, and once it begins, it doesn't stop. The third sign, spontaneous polarization in others. The third sign shows up through people, specifically through the way strangers react to you. And their reactions can be so intense, immediate, and confusing that it almost feels personal, even though it has nothing to do with you as a person. This is the phenomenon I call spontaneous polarization. You can walk into a room without saying a word, and some people will tense up instantly. Their eyes narrow, their body language closes, their energy turns cold. They reject you on sight despite having no history with you, no reason, no context. At the exact same time, other people will respond in the opposite direction. They'll open up immediately. They'll treat you like someone they've known all their lives. They'll tell you intimate stories within minutes. They'll trust you without hesitation. You do nothing to trigger either reaction. Your presence alone pulls it out of them. Psychologically integrated individuals act like catalysts. Your clarity highlights other people's unresolved material. You become a clean mirror, and whatever is inside them, light or shadow, gets projected onto you without them realizing it. When someone feels sudden hostility toward you, they aren't reacting to you at all. They're reacting to a part of themselves they've buried, a part they see reflected in you with painful clarity. Your presence exposes the truth they haven't faced, and when someone feels immediate warmth or admiration, they're recognizing in you a quality they long for but haven't allowed themselves to embody. You become a reminder of a possibility they're afraid to claim. Nothing about this is intentional. You aren't performing, you aren't trying to provoke or impress. You're just existing, and that's enough to stir the waters. People with a strong, defined psychic frequency don't move through the world unnoticed. They can't. Their energy is too distinct, too coherent, too revealing. It creates visceral reactions because, without a single word, it brings to the surface whatever is unresolved in others. If you notice that people are either strongly drawn to you or strongly repelled by you, often before you've even spoken, that isn't a flaw in your personality. It's evidence of your clarity. Your frequency is precise. It resonates with some and clashes hard with others. There's very little in between. The key is knowing the difference between this genuine psychic effect and ordinary attention-seeking behavior. The distinction lies entirely in intention. If you're putting on a persona, consciously or unconsciously fishing for reactions, then whatever responses you get are just reflections of the mask you're wearing. But if you're simply existing, grounded in your truth, and reactions keep appearing regardless, that's your frequency. Authentic presence doesn't broadcast itself. It doesn't need theatrics. It just exists, and the world can't help but respond. And once this begins happening consistently, something else becomes clear. You can no longer hide. Even if you try, it won't work. People will feel you the moment you step into a space. They'll sense you before you speak. They'll react to you because of something in you that goes beyond language or appearance. This isn't ego. It's physics, the natural consequence of a frequency that can't be disguised. What these three signs reveal about individuation. So what do these three phenomena, the intelligent body, the responsive universe, and the polarizing presence, really indicate about your inner evolution? Individuation isn't a journey toward perfection. It's a journey toward internal coherence. A high vibration doesn't make you saintly. It makes you whole. It means you've integrated your contradictions. You've faced your shadows and welcomed them back as lost parts of yourself instead of enemies to be fought. When the unconscious, the ego, and the core self begin communicating openly and honestly, the resulting unity creates a frequency so stable, so cohesive that the material world has no choice but to respond. Your body, your reality, the people around you. Everything rearranges itself around that inner coherence. People who vibrate at this level aren't free from doubt. They aren't glowing with eternal positivity. They're simply honest, brutally and consistently. They've ended the civil war inside themselves, and that inner peace changes the nature of their interaction with the world. Once your inner world unifies, manifestation becomes less mystical and more mechanical. A direct correlation forms between who you are and what appears around you. You emit a frequency that the world mirrors back. Your body enforces your truth. Reality echoes your inner movements. People react before you speak. These are the measurable consequences of psychological wholeness. But this clarity comes with a price. You lose the ability to blend in. You lose the ability to pretend. Your frequency becomes too defined to bend for comfort or conformity. It broadcasts your truth whether you want it to or not, and that can create loneliness. Not everyone can handle that level of clarity. Not everyone is ready to face what your presence reflects back to them. These signs aren't trophies earned through spiritual exercises. They're the natural outcome of confronting your own inner chaos and choosing integration over avoidance. The trap of spiritual ego. And right at the edge of this transformation lies the most dangerous trap on the path. Spiritual ego, what I call psychic inflation. This is the moment when someone begins interpreting these signs as proof of their superiority, when they start believing they're chosen, exceptional, more advanced than others. When these experiences inflate the ego instead of dissolving it, that is not integration, that is inflation. Spiritual narcissism wearing mystical clothing. When these experiences produce arrogance instead of humility, you haven't integrated anything. You've just built a bigger ego using spiritual language. Ask yourself one question to diagnose this clearly. Do these experiences make you feel separate from or superior to others? Do you constantly talk about how different you are, how connected, how advanced? Do you need people to validate your spiritual identity? If yes, you are not standing in coherence. You're feeding the ego. True integration is quiet, grounded, undramatic. Integrated individuals don't announce their synchronicities. They don't need validation. Their frequency speaks through its real-world effects, not through claims about it. If you feel compelled to prove you're vibrating at a high level, you aren't. Real power doesn't have to advertise itself. The difference between true coherence and ego inflation is subtle, but absolute. Do these signs humble you? Do they fill you with awe for the mystery of existence? Or do they make you feel above others? Your answer reveals everything. Psychic inflation is the death of genuine frequency. It happens when you confuse yourself with the archetypal energies moving through you, forgetting that you're the vessel, not the source, the lens, not the light. This is the greatest danger on the path. The moment you believe you are the power, you fall back into ego, just in a more sophisticated costume. True maturity shows up in simplicity, in the ability to live these phenomena without turning them into a spectacle, a theory, or a badge of identity. You simply live. Your body protects your truth. Reality mirrors your soul. People respond to your presence. This becomes reality, not a spiritual accomplishment, not a mystical performance. There comes a moment on the path of individuation, after all the shadow work, after the cycles of fragmentation and reconnection, when something quietly but fundamentally shifts. You stop looking for signs. You stop interpreting every moment. You stop collecting proof of your evolution as if you need a certificate for your inner life. You realize that a high vibration doesn't need to be labeled. It doesn't require validation. It doesn't need to be explained to anyone. It simply becomes the texture of your lived experience. This is what I call the return to the self, the homecoming that happens after you've walked through your own darkness and reclaimed the lost pieces of your soul. You come back to who you've always been, but with a clarity you didn't have before. You inhabit your frequency without needing to analyze it. Your vibrational state becomes second nature, not a goal you chase, not a skill you perform, just your default way of being. And in this final phase, something subtle but profound occurs. All the spiritual framing falls away. You don't need mystical explanations anymore. You don't need symbolic interpretations. The synchronicities keep happening, but they're no longer magical. They're just how reality communicates. The body keeps rejecting what's false, but you don't dramatize it. Projections from others continue, but you're no longer surprised. You stop thinking, look, a sign. Instead, you simply live inside the truth of who you are. That is true integration, when the signs cease being signs and become your ordinary reality. The end of pretending. The deepest maturity comes when you're no longer trying to be spiritual, trying to be conscious, or trying to be high vibration. You're not performing it, you're not curating it, you're not adjusting your behavior so others can recognize it in you. You simply are. Your frequency becomes non-negotiable, so non-negotiable that even if you tried to abandon it, you couldn't. You're done with pretending, done with denial, done with splitting yourself in half. You've reached a point where you're fully imprisoned by your truth, or more accurately, freed by it. And that is why these three signs are not something you aim for. They aren't spiritual milestones to tick off a checklist. They aren't glamorous, they aren't achievements. They're the natural consequences of staying present with yourself long enough, honestly enough, relentlessly enough that no part of you remains exiled. When you end the running, the hiding, the self-avoidance, your entire being reorganizes itself. It's not metaphorical, it's physical, psychological, energetic, and environmental. Your body transforms into the unwavering guardian of your authenticity. It refuses to let falsehood survive within you. It protects your frequency with migraines, nausea, exhaustion, whatever it takes to keep you aligned. You can no longer tolerate environments that demand self-betrayal. Your biology simply won't allow it. The world becomes a mirror of your psyche. Synchronicities turn into a constant flowing conversation. Reality responds to your emotions in real time. You can no longer claim helplessness. You can no longer pretend life is happening to you. You must accept the responsibility that you're co-creating every piece of your experience, not through magic, but through coherence. You become visible, not because you seek attention, but because you can no longer hide. People feel your frequency before your presence registers. Their reactions reveal their own inner landscapes, not yours. You activate dormant potential in others, stir up suppressed shadows, awaken forgotten aspirations. Because your clarity amplifies the truth they're avoiding. This is the cost and the gift of integration. It is not always comfortable, but it is always real. The real question. So the question isn't whether you display these signs right now. The question is whether you're ready for the responsibility that comes with living this clearly. Are you ready to inhabit a life where you can't look away from yourself? Are you ready to recognize your part in every situation that unfolds around you? Are you ready to hold both the burden and the freedom of a frequency that cannot lie? This path is not romantic, it's not glamorous, it's the most radical form of self-encounter that exists. And if you've listened to this and felt something resonate deep in your experience, if these signs sound like the terrain of your own life, know this: you are not alone. There are others who walk this path, others learning to live inside this clarity, others carrying the same weight, the same responsibility, the same strange blend of isolation and freedom that comes from vibrating with coherence. And the beauty is, you don't need to explain it. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to live it with integrity, with quietness, with humility. Remembering always that you are the conduit, not the source, the channel, not the origin, the witness, not the owner of the power that moves through you. A final reflection. If any part of this stirred something in you, take a moment to reflect. Which of the three signs is currently shaping your life the most? Is your body rejecting what no longer aligns? Is reality speaking to you through synchronicity? Are people reacting to your presence more intensely than ever? These aren't coincidences. They are the markers of a person who has stopped pretending and started living authentically. And once that begins, nothing in your life remains unchanged.